if you show me a picture like this, you know, I wouldn't be able to tell what the heck I was looking at either. So the big thing is to identify the special thing here. And in pineal gland, it is these dark crystals, what's called brain sand. Right, so you see those dark blue, dark purple, almost black crystals. That is brain sand. And this is the only place in any tissue you're going to see really anything like it. So if you see brain sand, you're sure you're looking at pineal gland. And that means that any cell here, right, every cell is a pinealocyte. Just to see the, so it's just crystals. I mean, there's nothing really special about it. But, so yeah, so those crystals are brain sand. Pituitary gland is, let's find it, mainly identified because, primarily identified the pituitary because the anterior and posterior are right next to each other with a pretty clear dividing line between the two. So mine's torn, don't let that throw you. But you see there's sort of this whole light area over here and then this whole dark area. So that sort of split, right, where part of it's light and the other part of it's darker, tells you you're looking at pituitary gland. The dark part is the anterior pituitary. The anterior lobe is the dark portion. The lighter color here, that is the posterior lobe of pituitary gland. And we'll talk about this in lecture. You don't really care today, but just anterior lobe is a much more traditional gland. It looks like most of the rest of them. Lots of dark purple cells. Posterior pituitary is really different. It's mostly neurons. It's actually mostly axons, which is why it's so white because there's all that pattern. So anyway, the dark light split, the light side being posterior pituitary, the dark side being anterior pituitary. Thyroid's probably the easiest of all of these. That's assuming, of course, I have a thyroid. Thyroid? Hang on, let me find my thyroid. So thyroid is organized into really obvious follicles. So that's high power, or low power. It's much, let me zoom in, probably twice even. What's that? Yeah, kind of. And that is, the thyroid has these sort of circles of purple cells surrounding this pink fluid. Right, that's called a follicle. And let me zoom out once just so you can see it sort of a little bit bigger. But, right, lots and lots of follicles all over the place. And again, really the only thing you're ever going to see that looks remotely like this. So lots and lots of follicles. So zoom in so we can talk about one of these. All right, so the pink stuff in the middle there, that fluid, is called colloid. So the colloid is the pink stuff in the middle. And any cell touching the colloid is a follicular cell. So basically all the cells that, you know, go green around it there, those are all follicular cells. And so the colloid plus the follicular cells, that is a follicle. So the follicular cells and the colloid together. And the reason there's this white gap here is because the colloid evaporated a little bit while they were making the sections. Setting there. And then you're going to have a whole bunch of cells, see, most easily down here. Right, but you see these cells right here that aren't part of the follicle, that are in between the follicles. Right, they're usually whiter in color, but the big thing is they're not part of the follicle. Those are the C cells. You could write any of the other ones you want, but nobody has ever misspelled C yet. So the C stands for either calcitonin cells or clear cells. But the lighter colored cells, the big thing is they're not part of a follicle. So they're in between the follicles, not touching colloid. Alright, so again, the follicles all over the place tell you you're looking at thyroid gland. Parathyroid will always be attached to thyroid. So, right, it's just glommed on there. So you see this dark patch of tissue there, that's parathyroid gland. There's actually another one up here. There's this dark piece of tissue So you'll always be able to recognize thyroid because it's got the follicles everywhere, and then you'll see this big lump of dark cells all over the place. That is parathyroid. That's as far as I can zoom in for now, but you notice the terms there, chief cells and oxyphil cells. Hopefully those sound familiar to you. Remember, chief cells are going to just be the most common one there. And so as you're looking around, right, the small dark cells all over the place, those are chief cells. And the oxyphil cells are going to be a little bit bigger and a little bit clearer. So I think there's a pretty obvious one right there. You can see that sort of white space around it on the nucleus. So that is an oxyphil cell. And so these bigger, clearer cells are oxyphil cells. Most of the cells are chief cells. I don't know why it won't focus today with this one. But again, so parathyroid just on its own, it's really hard to distinguish, but because you'll always see it next door to thyroid, it's not that bad. Adrenal gland is identified mostly by the layers. So, look at that, it popped up pretty well. So when you look at the adrenal gland, there are several stripes here, and depending on how you cut it. All the way around the outside of everything, there's a capsule. So that is capsule, right? Looks basically the same as it does on testes or something else. So fairly thick capsule there. And again, so you have an outside and an inside, and we'll talk more about this in a second. But the adrenal cortex is going to be the outer layer, so it's actually from here to there. I'll tell you how I can tell that in a second. And adrenal medulla is the middle layer, and that's just right down here. So in other words, this is going to repeat. That is, you're going to have cortex, medulla, and then cortex again. So if I scoot down this direction, right, that's still medulla there. This is adrenal cortex again. You see capsule again. So just pay attention to where you are. So the easiest way to identify the medulla, because I know these layers start to get into each other, most of the time it's got these big blood vessels in it. So when you see those big blood vessels, that's a very good hint. You're probably looking at adrenal medulla. Certainly when you see capsule, you know the part that's touching that is part of cortex, right? The difficulty is how far down does it go? And that's partly just sort of look at those vessels and some other things. The adrenal cortex is split into 3 layers. You can almost see them here. That is, right, from here to there, about as thick as the capsule, that is zona glomerulosa. So zona glomerulosa is, right, the outermost of these 3 layers. Zona glomerulosa is the part of the adrenal cortex touching the capsule. Now, it's about as thick as the capsule. That's a pretty good guesstimate there. This middle section is the biggest of the 3, and that's zona fasciculata. So zona fasciculata is the middle layer of the 3 cortical layers. And then zona reticularis is the deep one. Zona reticularis is the part touching the medulla. This deepest layer from here to here, that is zona reticularis.
What's a glomerulosa again?
So just from here to there, yeah. So about as thick as the capsule is. It's actually one of those, I wish I could zoom out more because it gets a lot easier when you can zoom out further, but nonetheless, glomerulosa, fasciculata, reticularis, and then medulla in the middle. Alright, so anyway, so you see stripes, that's adrenal gland. And then the last one is pancreas. And pancreas, again, there's a lot of purple cells all over the place. The big thing about the pancreas, you can almost pick them out even here. You see that slight lighter island there? Those are the islets of Langerhans. And usually they jump out a little bit better when they zoom in once. Just a little bit, that's a little better. Right, so that island right there, that lighter colored space, that lighter colored one, kind of sort of up there. see it at least fairly easily, right? So that whole lighter colored region, that's the islet of Langerhans, that's the part that's making the hormones. All the rest of this, all the purple stuff, so the majority of it is the acinar cells. Right, remember the acinar cells are the ones that make the digestive enzymes. So anyway, the lighter region is the islet of Langerhans, all the darker cells are acinar cells. Questions? Obviously, we'll do that again next time. We'll go all through histology again next time.